so glad to be here tonight.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. We feel like even though it's been a good 2 weeks over last year, we're itching and dying to get to see you guys again. Because last week we went ahead and hosted a hot dog social, and we got to hang out with the ones that showed up. So the ones that came out, thank you guys, and thank you for making it a fun night. We had a blast seeing all you guys again, and we got to see Savannah and Isaac and Baby and the rest of everybody. It was fun and relaxing. We got to sit back, throw baseball around, football around, got to talk. The Markles were there, so it was good to see them as well. But yeah, we are excited. We're stoked to be back teaching and back in this book that we're going through. And man, this book, like I said, we're going over chapter 7. And this book's been a really good learning lesson, and it's been one of those hard learning lessons that it gets at you, and sometimes you're like, no, that's not me. But then you realize, oh my goodness, it's poking me, and it's pushing my buttons, and I like those kind of books. You get to learn more about it. So last week we were on chapter 6, and we're wrapping up chapter 6, and we were talking about the opposite of God. And if you guys remember, I think Dan started off with chapter 6 talking about opposite day. And do you guys remember opposite day and things that pertain to opposite day and the opposite of what God, calls us to be? And we talked and we went into a little bit of weaknesses.
Yeah.
And how the weaknesses, the opposite of that, actually are strengths. And we talked about how at times we wallow in our weaknesses, and Dan, I think you talked about to be able to embrace that part of you that you might be struggling, and we said embrace those weaknesses.
Yeah.
And those are the hard parts,
Yeah.
But anyway, before we get into it, I just totally forgot. Before we get into it, we're going to go ahead and talk about announcements and things that are coming up and thoughts that we're putting on, to see what's going on. So go ahead.
Well, hey guys, it's good to see you all again through the camera. Can't really see you, but whatever. We don't know what any of that stuff means anymore because this is not reality. So, but I do want to second what Scotty just said. All 4 of us just had a blast last week getting to get with everyone. Sorry that Michelle and I had to leave a little early. We just had like a hectic couple of weeks with all kinds of stuff going on. Just to give an update for those of you that were there that knew, those of you that didn't know, but Jeremiah got called to St. Louis with the National Guard to help with all the rioting and all that stuff that's going on. Got his first deployment. And so we had to leave early that evening to run some stuff to him in Carthage. We did not know that or was not aware of that, so we had to leave a little bit early, and I apologize if we kind of just scrambled out on everybody and seemed to be a little absent-minded, I guess, on some of that. But he's actually supposed to be coming home Friday. They're saying that they're supposed to release them to come back home, so we're praying that that'll happen and everything. But regardless of all of that, once we finally got there with the hot dogs and finally got them on the grill and finally got to eat, and it was like already 7:30 or whatever, But regardless, I think everybody had fun and really enjoyed that. So it's just good to get back together in person.
Yes.
And have some awesome time just being face to face again. And with that being said, there's been some talk going on at church, some meetings going on at church, and some different kinds of things. And we've been in contact with Pastor David and Pastor Ken back and forth, trying to keep up with an idea of what's going on and what we can and what we can't do. We're hoping that coming up here next week that the governor is going to open this up a little bit more, so maybe we'll have a little bit more relaxed liberty at church.
Yeah.
But we are finding out, though, that even if they do loosen it up some, the church, I think, is still going to be pretty strict on the social distancing thing for quite some time. So you're probably going to be seeing a lot of changes here in the near future, even with our life group schedules and that kind of thing for quite some time.
Yeah.
But I really don't care as long as we can get back together and have a night that everybody can be there. That's all that matters to me. But right now, tentatively, unless things change, we want to go ahead and try to schedule a meeting on Monday evening.
Was that the 15th?
Is that the 15th or somewhere in
I
there?
won't be there.
I didn't look.
But you guys can go ahead. I'll be in Kansas City with
Wow.
Patty.
Um,
But that works. go for it though.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we're going to go ahead and try to
Back in
schedule
time.
Monday evening to actually have altered at the church.
Yeah.
We'll have to kind of get that all figured out and how we'll have to set that up and everything. And then we'll just have to take this a week at a time.
Right.
We hope to be able to keep doing it that way afterwards. We'll just have to see how that goes. We may have to fall back on live every once in a while. I don't know yet. But if we can at least just get some actual live classes done in there every once in a while,
Right.
I think that'll help. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. Just stay tuned. We'll keep you guys in the loop by text and Facebook and all that good stuff to try to keep you updated on what's going on. But that's kind of the tentative plan right at the moment is next Monday we'll have actual altered at the church. So,
I think what the goal is, and we talked about as leadership wise, that we're talking about maybe staggering days, like say for instance, altereds on Monday, men's group on Tuesday, eventually later on women's group on Wednesday. I mean that way it'll open up different days and it'll open up the church so that way we've got more space in between us. Because if we cram us all together at once, that's going to break so many guidelines. With things that are going on and stuff, especially for the COVID part. So I think, with Monday, when we talked about Monday, maybe this might be a trial thing. We'll see how Mondays work. Maybe we'll check Thursdays. Maybe we'll check a different day just to see, and then what works for us. Because as much as we speculate that this is going to happen, it never works out that way.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Until we try it
Yeah.
and see what fits for us as a group. And the thing I love about our group too, guys, and including all you guys, is we're so flexible and we can figure stuff out. We can work things out together as a group. So I think, I'd like to hear some feedback as well. See what you guys think.
What night works great?
What night?
Besides Wednesday.
Besides Wednesday, I like the idea of, staggering because, and I used this example last night, the fact that, like, say for instance, we do Monday nights, for example, and men's group, they do Thursday nights. It gives us and the guys an opportunity to even sit in with some of the men in our group and vice versa. Or, say for instance, the youth group or the youth sponsors need more sponsors. It gives us other opportunities, you guys as well, to serve other opportunities, other places in the church that might need help. And this will free you up to serve. Because, on Wednesday nights, we'd be packed over here, and so we can't serve over here. And this will open up. And I think, back to what Pastor Dave and we were talking a couple days ago, Pastor Dave and I, he hit it on the head when he said a new normal. Because if you think about it, a new normal, our normal is going to be different. And I think, I see the enemy trying to, and this is what I said last night in our meeting too, I see the enemy trying to take one day during the week of church. Well, here's how cool God is. He adds 4 more days of church during the week and gives us an opportunity to even serve. So give us feedback, let us know what you think. Joanna, okay. Nice, okay.
So we'll have one person there on Monday. We're good to go.
And what time works good for everybody? Not
Yeah.
everybody can make it at 6.
We can do it a little later. We just would like to get some feedback to kind of get an idea how to go with this and how to plan this out.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that everybody's can kind of. I know Wednesdays are kind of set in stone for a lot of people,
Right.
and they have that night open, but the reality of it is we may not get Wednesday. So if we don't, then we need to know what some good options are because we want to make sure we utilize our weeknight to the best possible scenario where everybody can come that wants to be there. And so please get back with us on that and help us figure this out.
Right. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into tonight's lesson because time is flying. I cannot believe it's 1:15 already. Tonight's lesson's on chapter 7. We're going to go ahead and break into chapter 7. And chapter 7 is simply titled Heaven's Secret Weapon. Heaven's Secret Weapon. Now, like I said last week, we talked about the beginning stages and we talked about failures. And if you guys want to post, let me ask you a question. During the past 2 weeks, has God placed on your heart something that maybe a failure, maybe something that God's presented to you that you might not have noticed that you're struggling with even? If you want to share that, you're more than welcome to. I think, the reason we leave it open is because us 4, as we go on, we share our failures, not to give glory to the failures or the struggles, but to give glory to God because He brought us through these failures.
Right.
And at one point, just like you guys, we thought, man, I'm never going to get out of this. Man, I'm super angry. Man, I'm super sad. Like today for me was a crazy day, and I was really angry because job and work and things. But you know what? God's good.
Yes.
And, allowed us to come back, all four of us. Michelle had an opportunity where she was almost gone, but, God worked it out to where all four of us are back together, and it's always an honor to be back, especially full force, and we get to hear different perspectives. So we're talking about failures, and if you guys have failures and weaknesses that God's opened up for you recently, share it. We'll go with it. We'll go through it with you. But tonight we're going to talk about heaven's secret weapon, and it's failures. Again, we're going to talk about this in chapter 7. And trust me, I do not like talking about failures. I do not like talking about fears. My personality, it's easier for me to have fun and cover up the issues. I don't want to share those. But there's times in life where I have to get real. Not only do I have to get real with people, myself, I have to get real with God. Because if I'm not doing it, well, guess what's going to happen in my relationship with the Lord? I'm going to try to conceal those areas as well. We're going to go through that tonight. It says, the beginning of the book, it talks about when it comes to weaknesses, we tend to oscillate between two extremes. Both come from insecurities. And think about your insecurities as well for the failures. Number 1, we wallow in our weaknesses. Number 2, we pretend that they don't exist. And that was a big struggle for me. It's easier to cover things up, or it's easier to say, no, you're good, Scotty. Just move on. There's nothing wrong. We talked about the first extreme when discussing our identities, and it was through our third words. The problem with the woe is me approach to weakness, and listen to this. We authorize ourselves to contradict God's calling on our lives. So when you're walking around, woe is me, I can't do that. In reality, intentionally, you're authorizing yourself to contradict what God's got for you on your life.
Yep.
How many times have you thought you're not good enough? When God gave you an opportunity, you are good enough, but you talked yourself out of it.
Yep.
And then you realize, oh my goodness, I could have done that the whole time. That's almost the same thing. Effectively, we make ourselves to be the qualifier. Not God. By doing that, we make ourselves to be the qualifier. As we've seen, our self-assessment can also be widely inaccurate. And that speaks for me as well. Many times we err on the side pretending that our weaknesses don't exist. We try to hide our flaws from God, like I spoke about earlier, from others, and from ourselves. The problem with this is until we admit our needs, God can't do much to help us. How many times I think about, I have an issue, but then when I go and try to solve those issues, I don't bring up those issues. Instead, I dance around, I talk about certain things, I joke about certain things, but what happened? I didn't fix that need. I didn't fix that problem. I didn't fix that issue. Therefore, it gets buried and gets sidetracked.
And Scotty, something I want to, back here where it says effectively we make ourselves out to be the qualifier. Another way that you can look at that is how he kind of has it in the book, we deputize ourselves to be the qualifier.
Yeah.
And what I like about that word, deputize, is whenever you are deputized, you are given a title, you are given authority by someone that has a higher authority than you.
Yes.
So when you are a sheriff in a county and you're in law enforcement and you want your officers below you that's going to represent you, and they're going to represent you in that authority to keep law and order, to keep justice, you deputize those people below you, which then passes off that power that you have.
Yeah.
It passes off that power to them to operate in their place.
Mm.
And when you look at this and you say, we effectively deputize ourselves to be the qualifier, it kind of gives it a whole different meaning.
That's good.
Because we can look at it and say that we just call ourselves a qualifier.
Right.
But in all reality, if you look at it like we deputize ourselves to do it, we're literally taking power that we honestly don't deserve to have, that was not given to us. We are taking this power on our own accord, and we are choosing within our own selves to utilize that power to speak something over our lives that's not
Right.
real.
That's not
To
his
speak,
will.
yeah, speak something over that's completely out of God's will. And I think when we look at it in that aspect, that not only are we deciding on our own how our life's going to be, not only are we calling our shots,
Mm-hmm.
but we are doing that with a likeness of a full authority
Right.
of God that we really don't possess.
That's good.
And I think that's something that we have to be super careful of whenever we get ourselves into this situation, when we're trying to hide our weaknesses and we're trying to while we're wallowing in them, as it says here, we're trying to hide them and not let them be seen. Our response to that is to try to come back looking strong.
That's good.
We try to come back looking like we have strength in our life, because that's how we resonate with people and get them to believe our side of the story.
Right.
Is if we come back to them, and if we have a weak moment, but yet we come back strong at someone, they're going to think, hey, they got it all together.
Mm-hmm.
They're okay.
Mm-hmm.
But in all reality, deep inside, you're falling apart.
Yeah.
And you're all screwed up and you're all messed up, but you don't want to admit it, but we are. And so whenever we take that step and put ourselves in God's place and give our own, call our own selves, that power down upon our own selves to do what is God's place to do, then we definitely have to be super careful with that.
No, I like how you added deputize, because you're right. You take authority. It's almost saying like, okay, God, I've got this. I know, you're saying I've got this right now. I don't need you, if you will.
Yeah.
But then what happens? You fail, and then you say, okay, God, I need you. And I say that because that's my personality. I've done that many times where I'm like, I got this. I know I'm deputizing myself to be the qualifier.
Yeah.
But I'm not. We've got a qualifier.
Yeah.
We just have to sit still and listen. I love it. So the problem with it is not until we admit our needs, it's God can't do much to help us. And I love what the book says. And I love what he says when he says, greatness is birthed from humility, not denial. Greatness is birthed from humility, not denial. And I think, man, to be transformed, to be transparent, that's huge. It takes a lot to say, okay, God, I have problems. Okay, God, I need you.
Yeah.
Those insecurities. Think about those insecurities. Those help with those insecurities that you might have. Okay, God, I fail in this area. Okay, God, I'm scared of this issue. Okay, God, and you have to be transparent. Take those needs to Him for Him to understand what you're going through. You can't just assume, okay, God knows what I'm going through. He's going to take care of them. He wants you to give those things up. He wants you to realize, hey, this is an issue that I need to give up. Hey, this is a time where I need to submit myself. Hey, I need to quit hiding behind my jokes and be real for once with God. Sometimes we assume our weaknesses become strengths when they are embraced and not ignored. When those weaknesses are truly embraced and not ignored, that's when true strength comes. How many of you guys like to embrace your weaknesses? I sure don't.
Yeah.
But it's a thing to practice. Think about, being real with yourself. Okay, what am I weak at? What are my failures at? And try to embrace those and try to figure out where they came from. I know still today, I started doing this whole journey through 3 or 4 years ago of weaknesses and failures and what's going on. Because when I realized those weaknesses and failures, well, now I'm able to communicate with my wife, and now I'm able to communicate with God instead of trying to hide behind all these layers that we talked about 2 or 3 chapters ago, and be real with the Lord. So guess what happens? My prayers become real. They become from my heart instead of how I feel. Instead, they become like, God, this is what I need from you. God, I need you. They become truly submitted to the Lord, and my heart is open for that.
In all reality, if we are denying within our own selves our problems and our weaknesses that we have in our life, all we're really doing is we're putting off being great and humble before Christ and being that person He wants us to be to a future date.
Yeah.
Because we know that if we deny this stuff in our life, we can't do that forever. Eventually, we are going to crash and burn.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way around that. We cannot sit there and keep pushing stuff under the carpet and expect it to be hidden forever. Because in reality, if you take dirt and you shove it under a carpet rather than vacuum it up, and you do this week after week after week, eventually somebody's going to walk in that room. They're going to say, "What's that big lump over there? Is that a dead body or what is that?" You know,
Right.
Because the
That's
carpet's
good.
no longer flat; it's like 4 feet off the ground because you got all this dirt shoved underneath there.
Right.
Our life's the same way.
That's good. Yeah.
If we have all these weaknesses and these unqualifiers and all these things in our life that we fight, and we do not want to humble ourselves before God and allow Him to work through us and create something great and strong out of all of that, we just choose to shove it under the carpet and deny it, then that's what's going to happen. It's just going to pile up in our life, and eventually it's going to be exposed.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to eventually see that big lump that we're trying to hide, and then we're going to have to answer for that.
That's right.
We're going to come face to face with someone eventually that's going to call us out on it.
Mm.
And then you're sitting there thinking, you know what? All this is just weights off my shoulder now. I've just unloaded on whoever, and I feel so much better now, and I've asked forgiveness, and I've got God now helping me get through all this, and I'm moving on. Man, I wish I would have done this 10 years ago.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's the first thing that we come back and say, because I've caught myself saying that I don't know how many times.
Same here.
When I look back at my life and I see places where if I would have just stuck to my path and moved forward in Christ and let Him work on me instead of trying to do it by myself, then I would have been a lot further in life with Christ even at this point in my life.
Right.
And it's lessons that we learn as we move along, but Satan doesn't want us to see all that. He wants us to hide it.
Right. Do we have any comments that pertain to it? I didn't see.
Caleb said, and I'm sorry, I got new bifocal contacts, so I'm really struggling to even read right at the moment because I'm just trying to. He said, well, I have come to see over the past few days how legalistic I have become in trying to pursue a relationship with God.
Wow.
And Joanna replied and said, it's super easy to slide into legalism if you don't understand how powerful God's grace is. And it's so funny because, was it this last Sunday because we were at church, but the Sunday before, Pastor Lindell is talking, he has a series going, Joyride, and he talked directly about this particular subject. Because I'm a type of person, and Dan will tell you, I'm like, oh, you gotta do this, and you have to do this, and if you don't pray, you're not gonna make it. All these things, and he touched on it, and he's like, that's being way too legalistic. He's like, if you put yourself, he's like, God is not about rules. He's like, He's about who you are, and He loves you. He's like, you can't say this, this, and this, and this. He goes, let me know how that works out for you. How stressed you're going to be, how much anxiety you're going to have. And He's like, and you're not even focusing on what God has for you and how much love and what He's wanting to do in you because you're too focused on, hey, I got to do this and I got to do this. Because I'll ask Dan, I'm like, I'm not praying enough, or I'm not reading my Bible, I'm not going to heaven. Like, back in the past, I'm not like that now, but it was it not? And I'm like, so I understand when you start thinking into that.
Wow.
And so I like what he said because it hit me out like that is so funny because Pastor Lindell did just talk about that.
Yeah, read that next one, Joanna's. You have it.
I've been learning the last few months how easily I try to control a situation in my head out of an unconscious fear that God won't take care of me.
Wow.
I'm not reading sorry.
And how many times do we do that?
Right.
And it can come back to the legalism thing, or it can also just come back to the fact that maybe we're moving forward in Christ and Satan doesn't want us to.
Uh-huh.
And so that's his charge back at us to try to get us to think we're failing. And I know that we've talked about this before many times and altered about how our mind is our battlefield.
Yeah.
If Satan's going to come after us, that's the first place he's going to start, is in our mind, because he knows that the power of our life exists inside of our minds.
That's right.
And I think a lot of times, kind of on top of what Michelle was just saying, a lot of times we try to, all we think about is, man, I got to get these people to heaven. I got to, one way or the other, I got to bark the rules, I got to, deliver the orders or whatever, because that's how we've grown up, because I've been guilty of that myself before. But in all reality, He's not really all that concerned about people getting to heaven. What He's more concerned about is for us to get heaven inside of us while we're here on this earth.
That's right. That's good.
That's what God wants. And just because you sit there and tell somebody, oh, you need to read the Bible 10 times a day, or you should be on your knees praying 3 times a day, pointed a certain direction, just like Daniel was every day in the Bible, and we got all these legalistic stuff or whatever, that's not what's going to get you to heaven. What's going to get you to heaven is that relationship that's inside of here, we are heaven on earth
Mhm.
if we give ourselves over to Christ and allow Him to rule and reign in our life, and we take that path that He wants us to be in. So don't ever look at it like all I'm trying to do is get to heaven, or all I'm trying to do is lead so-and-so to get them to heaven, or whatever. Yes, that is our goal. We want everybody to make it to heaven, but to get to heaven, we need to get heaven inside of us first. And we
That's
can
right.
do that right here and in the now.
That's good.
I want to say to Brian, you're not alone, and we're gonna pray for you. And there's times that we all walk these things, and it reminds me, going back to Pastor Dave's message on Sunday, of like we have to remind ourselves sometimes through the Word of God what He says about us, that we're fearfully and wonderfully made,
Yes.
that He that's begun a good work in us will continue that we have to put on that armor of God every single day and just fill our mind with His Word and speak it out,
Yes.
and don't let the enemy just be in your mind and that, warring in your mind of, all these lies, like, speak His Word out over yourself and worship it. We'll be praying for you.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's awesome. And something that I was talking to Pastor Ken today, and he made a comment that I think is super relevant right now. He said that everybody's wanting to get back to church. And when you sit there and think about that, a lot of us are ready to get back to church.
Yeah.
But I think it also needs to be rephrased. I think a lot of people need to get back to church.
Yes.
And I read the other day, I saw a post that Craig Rochelle put up, what does reopened church look like? Was kind of his topic in this post that he made. And he was kind of going through some things. It was kind of geared towards his life group leaders and his leadership. But he said that one thing that is probably going to be different when we come back to church is there's going to be a lot of people not there.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of people that's in their new norm now, like Pastor David taught last week or preached last week from the pulpit. There's a lot of people that have gotten too used to not being there.
I agree.
Yeah.
They've gotten too used to watching it on YouTube, on Facebook, Twitter, wherever it may be that they're picking up their services at. And now they're going to feel comfortable with the fact that, hey, I can just sit here on the couch with my coffee and do my coffee selfies and watch TV and watch sermons every Sunday. And, I think that that's a very dangerous place to be, because I have myself have seen, and we've talked about this amongst us even, and with Pastor David we've talked about this, how even on our live streams people are kind of falling off of it.
Oh yeah.
The numbers just aren't quite there, and it's not about numbers.
Right.
What it's about is dedication. What it's about is faith. What it's about is that relationship with God that we claim to have. Is that faith, is it strong enough that it's keeping us coming back even to virtual church every week?
Right.
Or are we falling away from that also?
Right. Right.
And so nobody can sit and tell me after all this has happened that going to church isn't important.
Right. Right.
Because you can see all the battles people are fighting now because they've not been to church.
And I think for me, don't get me wrong, I think what we're doing is great live stream. I think the churches are doing great live stream. I think Craig Rochelle's doing a good thing. But I think for me, because I'm such a personal person, I love living life with people. And I've got to have that interaction face to face.
Well, they're my family.
Right.
I mean, and
Well-
I want to see my family face to face.
And it encourages me as well
Yeah.
as a Christian. Hey, look.
Yeah.
Let's
It
go.
reminds me of forsake not the gathering together,
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason behind that. Like we need
Assembling. Yep.
Yep.
On the note of moving on the note of legalism, you're not going to like the next phrases if you're struggling with legalism, and sometimes I do. So it says sometimes we assume, or maybe we've been taught, that a person who really loves God never settles for less than perfection. We think we have to handle positive thoughts, positive confessions, positive actions. Now, we're all in favor of positivity, but I'm dead set against dishonesty, even when it's to ourselves that we're lying to. We were talking about the legalism. Man, we're so focused when it comes to legalism. I've got to fix myself so I can get to heaven. I'm afraid because I got to get to heaven. I've got to fix this. But then it takes away the whole ministry of spreading the gospel because you're so worried about this.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness, that's how life is with life groups. You live life, you move on, and you grow together, and you seek the Lord together. But if you're so focused and center focused on this because this isn't perfected, I'm not reading my Bible 20 times a day like you mentioned, I'm not saying my prayer like 5 minutes longer than I need to be, I'm going to hell. That's legalism, and I see the limits on that. That's back to what we've talked about many times. We call it analysis paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
You're overthinking it, and that's the enemy. Sometimes the enemy, he keeps you busy. We talk about busyness. Sometimes he does it in your mind.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm so glad I'm just because things like that, I don't think of, overthink things, because it is what it is. That's how it was shown. God, you're leading me. Okay, show me.
Yeah.
So admitting our weaknesses is not doubt, fear, or lack of faith. Actually, it's one of the clearest signs that we have faith. It means that our confidence is placed in God, not ourselves. It means we are secure enough to know who He is, to admit who we are not. Man, I love that. We're secure enough to admit who He is. Now, we talked about the I am. And in order for us to realize who He is, we've got to realize who we are not. And who we are not without I am, which is God. We need God daily. Man, today I needed the Lord. I was like, God, help me through this, because this day is going crazy. And I had customers saying that things I didn't say, and they called in, and things got escalated. My supervisor had to call me, and it's so frustrated. I was so frustrated that I was just like, I'm going to go over right now and talk to that customer face to face. My boss is like, no, cool down for a little bit, then you can go talk to him. And that's what I really had to do. I had to pray, and it wasn't just one, it was like 2 or 3 others. And I'm just like, what in the world is going on? It was just one of those days. But anyway, I needed God at that moment. I still need God at those moments. Can you feel the anger? Sorry. And I still need God at those moments, because I have to realize who I am not and who He is in me. On the other hand, when we deny our need for help, instead of weaknesses, they become strength. Our strength becomes weakness. So instead of our weaknesses becoming strength, our strength becomes that weakness. We insist on building the illusion that we have it all under control. We barricade ourselves from needing help in the first place. So it's almost like saying that, once again, we're covering up those weaknesses, and we're not admitting that, God, we need you. We're saying, God, we've got this, when we don't have it. You know, what happens there? I've lived that cycle many times in my life. Then God shows you, okay, I told you, you need me, because I'm the type of person that I'm just saying, God, I need this, God, I need that. I've mentioned before, there's times where I've counseled God. Who am I to even say counsel? But then He makes me realize, okay, no, you're wrong, and you do need me. In this book, the author mentions that he took tennis lessons. And this is a quick example, that he was kind of nervous because he had no idea what he was doing. Now, some of you guys that don't play tennis and you guys get nervous, tennis is a hard sport. I mean, it's super hard, because you see those guys on TV and Wimbledon, and they're hitting the ball super hard, but then when we try to do it, it goes over the fence every single time.
Yeah.
And we're like, how in the world did they do that?
Hard.
Yeah. So he's talking about, so he had no idea what he's doing. He mentioned that the instructor said, okay, let's see what I have to work with. What do you know? Is what the instructor told Stephen. Stephen replied, I had no idea what I am doing. The instructor came back with, that's great, just the way I like it, which confused Stephen. And that's how he explained that when people come knowing that they know just enough tennis, it's impossible for the instructor to teach those people, because they don't want to trust a new way, because they're so used to their way. And this is what's interesting when it comes to this. And they try to show the coach how much they know instead of learning what he has to teach them. So there's many times where, I think about instructors, and I it automatically went to myself, even this, because there's times where I've had people try to show me how to play tennis, but I've been playing tennis since I was like 5. Mm-hmm. But instead of learning these ways, I'm like, no, this is a better way. Instead of learning to the instructor. And this hit me hard, because I was like, man, that's been my relationship with the Lord in the past. Instead of God saying, God, Scotty, I want you to be uncomfortable. I'm trying to show you this. I'm like, no, God, I've done this before. I'm going by my past experience. I'm going to do it this way. And it fails every single time. What's the old saying? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. The same thing goes. That goes in life. God wants to steer me down the right, correct path, His will in life, in marriage, in relationships. But there's times where I have to submit and say, okay, God, show me, teach me. Show me how to interact with so-and-so. Show me how to communicate. Show me how to be vulnerable. Show me how to be transparent, because I don't know how. If I rely on my own self, my own flesh, it's going to end up an argument or something that I didn't want in the first place, or something that God didn't have willed for me in the first place. The book goes on and says, I wonder if God's favorite kind of person to do work with is the one that had no idea what he or she was doing. That kind of person says, okay, God, I have no idea what I'm doing here, but if you'll show me what you know about me, about life, about relationships, about my career, about my decisions, I will do it. How many times do we end up submitting to God truly? Even, in my work, I've been doing it for many years, and I think I've got it all down. And how many times have I said, okay, God, show me how to get through this day? I've said that many times. Okay, God, show me how to get through this conversation. Okay, God, show me how to get through this, even through this marriage. And God, show me, okay, here's what you're doing wrong. Here's what you're doing wrong. Fix it. And this is where I have to be obedient and say, okay, I'll do it. And there's times where we come together and I'm like, I'm sorry, babe. And I'm able to be vulnerable and submit to God and submit to her and apologize. And it's helped us a lot. There's times where I've realized, hey, I'm being hard-headed. She's telling me one thing, I'm not believing her. And then I've had to realize, okay, she was right the whole time. So guess what? I've had to apologize and say, you know what? You're right. And that's been super hard.
Sometimes that stuff comes back to habit. And it's like, for me, I got two examples kind of like this tennis story. I have always typed one finger, but I'm really fast at it. I can type really, because that's how I've always done it.
Right, that's good.
And I've gotten really good at that. So there's a couple of times in my life, though, that I got tired of doing that because I can't watch the screen while I type. I've got to watch the keyboard. So I would be finished and I'd look up and I got typos everywhere. So I've got to go back and fix them all. And she's told me several times, other people's told me, well, if you just learn how to type right where you could look at the screen, you wouldn't have all that problem, So I've gotten online and I've got little tutorials on YouTube and all this stuff. And I sit there and put my fingers and try to do all this stuff. I can't change it. I have tried and tried to change how I type. But now that I've got this drilled into my head, this way that I do it and as fast as I do it, I get impatient with trying to learn the other way and I just stop doing it. When I went to play guitar, I play guitar a little bit. I've got the basic knowledge of stuff down. And here a couple of years ago, I decided to try to take guitar lessons again. And whenever I went to the teacher, and he asked me, he said, so how much do you know? So I have to sit there and kind of show him everything that I know how to do and everything. And so I expect him to pick up from where I left off and start giving me all these lessons to make me this phenomenal guitar player.
Oh, of course.
And on the flip side of that, instead, he says, okay, well, I see about where you're at. Why don't you bring me some songs you want to learn, and we'll work on those. So I'd start racking my brain trying to think of praise and worship songs and different stuff that I'd like to learn and start bringing them to me. So he starts teaching them to me, and he starts teaching me some skills and stuff like that. But I find as I go along that it's kind of, I'm wishing that he would just have a plan for me. That I would just come in and say, okay, we're learning this week. Because after a while, I started thinking, man, what song am I going to learn now? Because I couldn't think of any, I was afraid if I bring this one in, it's going to be too hard or something, and I just felt like all I was doing was learning songs, and it made it very hard for me to be able to change my thought process on all of that, and I still wasn't learning guitar because my mind just was not wrapping around all of that. And when I saw what Stephen wrote here about the tennis thing, about God wanting to work with someone that has no idea what he's doing, I can see why. Mm-hmm. Because I struggle when I'm trying to learn more guitar. I struggle when I'm trying to get on my keyboard, trying to type correctly the way I'm supposed to, because I've got all these habits in my mind and I've got all this prior knowledge that's already there. And now I'm having to try to intertwine new stuff into that totally changes my complete process on how I've always done it. Mm-hmm. And so inside I had this internal fight going on. I want to learn, but inside of me, I'm fighting it. I'm not letting it happen. Right. And so I've got this barrier there. And this is exactly what God comes up against. Whenever God comes in and tries to change us, and he tries to get us on that right path after we've been doing it this way for so long, it's nothing but a fight for him. Because inside of us, we still got this, but I've always done it this way.
Mhm.
This is more comfortable for me. Why can't I just, there's nothing wrong with this way of doing it. Why do I got to change to that? That's where we started, questioning God and started at, what he's trying to get us to do. We start trying to put our own opinions on him, like, we were just talking about.
Right.
And so I like that example that he had, because, man, when I read that, that's the first thing that popped into my mind was a couple of battles that I've had with bad habits and whatever, trying to change, just in the normal everyday stuff. This is spiritual stuff.
Mhm.
This is way more important than me learning how to type on a keyboard.
Right.
But if I'm fighting that battle, you can only imagine the spiritual battle you're going to have when God tries to change the way he wants you to be from your old norm.
Right, that's good. The book says, and you were talking about barriers, the book says pride is the barrier that keeps us from receiving strength in our weaknesses.
Yeah.
So pride is the barrier that keeps us from receiving strength in our weaknesses. So say, for instance, you want to know what a weakness is that you have and you want to work on it. Well, like Dan says, you're not going to overcome it if you don't submit, if you don't acknowledge. If you don't say, okay, God, take this over. Instead, if you keep saying, okay, God, I've got this for now. You've acknowledged, you've helped me acknowledge what my issue is. Let me deal with it. Man, we talked about last couple weeks ago when, you remember when I said, personally, my struggle with I had to do everything perfect. I was so focused on the outside, making this look good. The songs we listen to have to be good. The way we dressed had to be good. It had to be church-wise and legalistic. But I wasn't focused on the inside. When really the inside was damaged beyond, beyond past events and things like that. So pride is the barrier that keeps us from receiving strength in our weaknesses. Sometimes you may have to find yourself embarrassed to ask others for help or even God for help. How many times have we done that?
Yeah.
There's times where I've struggled and been like, hey, can I talk to you? Or, I talked to Dan earlier. I didn't really say nothing, but he knew. I was like, dude, I'm mad. I am angry right now. I'm just going to need some help. There's things that happened at work. It was just a long day. You may feel you should be more mature by now, more capable. You know that God has called you to accomplish certain things, but the fact that your weaknesses keep getting in the way is humiliating. And I think it stems back to what Dan was saying, figure those out right now and work on them. If you try to hide them, if you try to sweep them under the carpet, it's going to affect you down the road. A year or two later, why am I still struggling with this? I thought I overcame it. You didn't allow God to overcome it.
I was going to say real quick, I was
Go
thinking
ahead,
about, you were talking about your guitar thing, I was thinking about when we first came to Abundant Life and then I'd gotten on the praise team, I was so used to playing the old hymn stuff, dun, 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 back and forth. It's totally different than like today worship. And I can remember one song that we had played multiple times. I used to be on the grand piano. Chatter Shauna was on the keyboard, and we'd all play together. And Shauna had asked me one day to go ahead and play this one song while she had to do something, I can't remember. And I go, well, I don't really know how to play the bridge of this, because it was like a real funky one. And she's like, what do you mean? We've played this, like you've played it over and over. And I was like, yep, I've sat over here and acted like I knew how to play it. Like I can play the rest of the song, but that part I can't. And she was like, what? And so I was embarrassed. And I had to ask her for help, or let me run through this a few times with everybody. But I was just thinking, like, it's so funny how if I grew so much in my piano playing when I started playing at Abundant Life, and sometimes we can't move to that next level if we don't allow God to, if we're not willing to say, hey, I need help, or how could I get to that next level of leading worship in a deeper way if I can't even play the song, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
So sometimes we hold ourselves up, and like you said, we're putting off till later down the road because we're not willing to just say, okay, here it is, I need this. Or
Yep,
That's good. So we got about 10 more minutes. Anybody else want to share something about that?
I can agree with her on, because even in my drumming, I've grown a lot.
Yeah.
And when I first started playing drums there, I told everybody I've never played this kind of praise and worship in my life.
yeah.
I mean, when I first started playing drums and I first actually got into a band many years ago, it was a Christian alternative rock band. I mean, it wasn't nothing like, wasn't churchy. I mean, it was church music, I guess you could say. It's Christian music, but it was a totally different style. And and people that don't play instruments think that, hey, they make it look easy. I probably can't do it, but it doesn't look like it's all that hard, And then if they find out that a person can play a certain kind of music but not another kind of music, they're like, that just blows their mind. They're like, well, I thought you just played the piano. Can't you just play it all? Or I thought you played the drums or the guitar or the bass. Can't you just play it all? No, there's different styles, and if you're not educated in those different styles, then you can't even venture that direction. You're going to get lost really quick. And so, yeah, that really does just come right over into our life, to be quite honest. Because, and Pastor David's message last week keeps coming up in my mind because that's the new norm.
Right.
That our instrument we play our whole life, and that style of music we play all life, that's our norm.
Yeah.
But when we get pushed out of that comfort zone and have to play something different, that's our new norm.
Yeah.
And that's the part we struggle with, and that's where the fight starts. That's where the irritation and the aggravation starts sometimes, because like it said here in the notes here, that we feel like we should be more mature at this point. We should be more capable at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times, as we've walked our walk with God and we've been in that for a long time, we should be getting more mature.
Yeah.
And we should be a more capable Christian. But how many of us and how many of you guys out there can actually look at your life in Christ right now and say that you are more mature?
Right.
Are you just riding along and just riding that fence and not really growing at all? Or are you maturing and being a more capable Christian? Someday there's going to be somebody walk across your path that's going to have a big, huge problem that you're not going to know how to fix because you're not deep enough with God to work it out with them through Christ and understand and be that person and that helper that they need.
Yes.
God, when He wants us to learn and He wants us to grow in Him and be a more mature Christian, He's doing that because He knows there's people out there that's going to cross our path eventually that's got a way huger problem than we've ever had to deal with ever in our life.
Right.
But we may be the person that's their answer at that moment, and we're going to need to know what to say.
That's good.
So we have to keep moving. We've talked about this. I know we've probably ran it in the ground in altar, but there's so much truth in this that we have to allow ourselves to grow.
Yes. Amen.
We have to do whatever it takes to prep ourselves. We have to do whatever it takes to keep digging deeper. And we should not want to be just one of those shallow, apathetic Christians. We should want to be somebody that's growing stronger every day and becoming a more mature Christian so that our weaknesses can be turned into our strength.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Because that's what it's all about.
That's exactly it. Yep.
So,
No, that's great. Guys, like Dan was saying, let this season of COVID, let this season of, I know it's weird, it's uncomfortable. Trust me, it's uncomfortable for us. Let this be a springboard to finding your new norm. Think about it. Let God help you find this norm of getting uncomfortable, finding your weaknesses, working within here. Trust me, we've been there many times. And allow that to be something different. I mean, it's not going to be normal. Don't ride the fence. Well, let's encourage one another. Keep digging. I love doing the devotions with a bunch of you guys because it encourages me, man. And some of these devotions are spot on with what I'm dealing with too in life. You might think it might be speaking to you. It's speaking to all of us. It's speaking to myself. So I appreciate that. Let this time of new normalcy. Let it help you advance in the kingdom. Let it help you in your growth and your maturity in Jesus. Next week, we're going to talk about, once again, heaven's secrets. Or what was it? What did I say it was? Sorry. Heaven's secret weapon. Sorry. Heaven's secret weapon in chapter 7. And we're going to touch in Judges 6, where it talks about how God met Gideon where he was at. So if you guys want to just kind of fast forward and read into chapter 6, we're going to cover that next weekend. And next week. We're going to go in depth on it. And if you guys have any questions or if there's some things and points on weaknesses that you guys want to pull out and talk about, let's do it. Stay in tune with us so that way we can figure out a time, a day that we're going to be meeting again soon in face to face. We're totally looking forward to that.
Yeah. We'll tentatively right now plan on Monday to be at the church and have an actual meeting at the church on Monday evening. probably, 6:30 or so, you think?
8 o'clock. So
8 o'clock.
There.
8 o'clock?
I'm sad I don't get to be there, but
We'll figure out a time.
Yeah.
But we'll keep in contact with you guys. Like I said, just keep watching social media and we'll text and that kind of thing. And please give us some feedback on what works best for you guys to meet during the week. We've kind of got a little dim green light right here to move forward and do something a little different. So we're going to jump on it and take advantage of
and
that.
text other people in the class, guys.
Yeah.
You know, reach out to them too, and just see, you know, talk to them. What works best for them too.
Yeah, because I don't know who all's actually seeing our Facebook Lives after the fact. We've not had a whole lot on while we're live here the last several weeks, but I know there's a lot of activity after the fact, after, you know, the weeks go by. But I don't know who all's staying in contact and up to date on all this or not, but we want our group to come back together. And so right now, tentatively Monday evening at a future given time, we will attempt to come together at the church.
I just want to do one praise report right quick.
Go ahead. Yes.
For all of you guys praying for Addie still, thank you so much. She actually passed her car seat test today. After 2 hours of sitting in a car seat, she got to move from bed seat to car seat. So we were super excited. It just makes life easier. And Dan knows because he's had to move the bed seat different times, and a car seat is just so much better. And her oxygen level was dead on. So we go to
Praise
Children's
Lord.
Mercy on Monday. So
Praise God.
we need your prayers for that
Love
too.
it.
But thank you guys so much for your prayers. We've actually had a lot of baby time, and Dan got to hold her last night, and it was the most precious thing. He just loved on her, and you
That's
know,
awesome.
we're gonna miss the fact that they're not staying with us when Maya gets back home, and I'm
Love
gonna
it.
have withdrawals. But I just truly want to thank you guys all for praying for her.
Yes.
Our biggest cheers of everybody and prayers that we appreciate it so much.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate that. One more thing I want to say before we head out for tonight. If you guys do talk to anybody else in Altered that hasn't been involved in a lot of our live, we're going to keep continuing this in class.
Yes.
So if any of them are not wanting to be lost when they get there, they probably need to go do some watching some previous, what do you call that, binge watch? Yeah. You need to go do some binge watching on our YouTube channel. Because this is like week 9 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of binge watching.
Right.
But they're going to be totally lost when they get there if they don't. So,
And I have one prayer request.
yes.
We have some COVID hit within our family, and it has touched some family members and kids. And so if you guys could remember them in prayer too, without naming any names, but they're in isolation, and one of them's pretty bad. So just if you guys would remember them in prayers too. And I think Gary Van Winkle.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
We need to remember him in prayer.
Yep. Keep him in prayer. He can use prayers. I mean, he got good feedback, but just keep him in prayer, and we'll keep you updated on what's going on. So he's a good man, good deacon in the church. So
Yep.
If there's any other prayer requests, put them out there.
Yeah.
Text us, let us know. We'll be praying, guys.
Yep.
comments and requests too. I mean,
Yep.
we'll definitely be praying. Closing out, maybe we'll see you guys next week. We'll keep you guys updated. Mr. Dan, would you mind closing us out, please?
Lord, we thank you again for this opportunity to share your word. I just pray, Lord, that it has not fallen on deaf ears tonight, Lord, that it's not with void. God, I pray, Lord, that any time that we all can get together and dig into your word, Lord, and dig into the truth of who you are, that we would always come away, Lord, with more knowledge and a stronger relationship with you than we've ever had.
Yes.
And God, I just pray, Lord, as we leave this evening, that you keep your hand of safety upon each and every person that's been a part of this, that is a part of our group and our church, God, all of our families. I just ask, Lord, that you would continue to just put a hedge of protection around all of us. We plead the blood over each and every person in our church family, and our own families, God, our circle of friends, Lord. There's just a lot of bad things going on out in the world today. And God, we're believing in you and having faith in you, that nothing's going to disturb our relationship with you, that nothing's going to come between us and anyone that we know, Lord, because we know that you're in control. And God, we come to you for everything that we get ever asked or anything. Keep your safety upon us this evening. Bless each person that's been on our live stream tonight, and anybody that's going to watch this in the future. And we just love you and thank you for your mercy and your kindness. In wonderful name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, see you guys. We'll let you know on Monday. the